having to play three.
Wednesday night on 104.5 The Zone, it is time to talk some soccer. NSC Backstage live on your radio for the next 60 minutes here on 104.5 The Zone. There is a ton to get to, a three-match week that just concluded, a managerial change for the Boys in Gold on the touchline, a three-match week that is about to begin. But first and foremost, engaged man Lucas Panzica is back. Ladies and gentlemen, right here on NSC Backstage, I'm Will Bowling. Lucas Panzica, first of all, a very warm congratulations to you and welcome back.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Great to be back. I'm fantastic, as you'd imagine. Did I miss anything? Did anything happen while I was gone? My goodness. Certainly came back with a lot of news that occurred when I was gone, multiple matches, and obviously the Gary Smith era over in Nashville. We have a lot to get into. We're going to talk about the games, two important results for Nashville. We're going to talk about what's next for the club, hear from Mike Jacobs, look ahead to Montreal on Saturday. But let me just say, for you and I both, how much we appreciated Gary Smith in our time working for Nashville SC, doing the games on radio. Just the class, the consistency, the professionalism from Smith, not just on the touchline with the foundation that he built, but with us as well. And we certainly wish him all the best. But without a doubt, there is a ton to get to about the Boys in Gold, and these next few weeks feel critical.
No doubt about it. That is well said by you to begin the show. Gary Smith will be certainly well thought of and highly regarded in Nashville soccer history, the only full-time head coach in Nashville's pro soccer history. We certainly thank him for always making time for us, for always treating us with the utmost respect here on the broadcast team. But like you said, these matches continue, the season progresses, and there is a ton to discuss. We will hear from Mike Jacobs, as you mentioned, and the full comments. We thought it was important tonight to play the full context, the full remarks from both General Manager Mike Jacobs, interim head coach Rumba Munthali after Nashville SC's 1-1 draw with Atlanta United over the weekend. Rumba Munthali's background, the way we have seen him interact with players, with coaches, that is all coming here tonight, as well as a look ahead to this weekend's matchup, which of course you'll be able to hear right here on The Zone, up in Saputo Stadium between Nashville SC and CF Montreal. But Lucas, we have two games last week to react to as well, and that is where we begin tonight. Nashville 2, Toronto 0 is where we will begin. And in his second match back from injury, Shaq Moore gets his first career MLS goal in the 81st minute. Walker Zimmerman with the assist, a third opportunity after a corner kick, and Nashville was up 1-0. Teal Bunbury becomes the fourth active player to reach 75 career regular season MLS goals. The clincher on a beautiful Tyler Boyd interception, run, pass, and assist. And Walker Zimmerman, Lucas, played 90 minutes for the first time this season for NSC. That is a very, very positive thing for the Boys in Gold.
No doubt about it. I mean, when you ask the question about Walker Zimmerman's impact and just how massive it is for this club, you just have to look at the very direct impact he has had, specifically this season alone, because we understand Walker Zimmerman's resume, two-time Defender of the Year as a Nashville player, all of those things. But Walker Zimmerman made his first MLS start since match day 2 against Montreal a couple of weeks ago. Nashville breaks a 5-match winless run against Montreal. He scores in that game, 4-1. Nashville wins, takes all 3 points at home. As you said, Walker Zimmerman goes the full 90 for the first time this season in that game against Toronto. Nashville gets a clean sheet for the first time since match day 1 against New York Red Bulls. These are not coincidences. Walker Zimmerman has a very direct impact on the success of this team, not just with the defensive pedigree. We saw the impact he can have in the attack as well in that Montreal game and in the Toronto game, providing the assist for Shaq Moore, his fellow defender. So you said this at some point, I think, when we were broadcasting during the Montreal game, that Walker Zimmerman, you can make an argument, means more to his team than any other defender in Major League Soccer. I think that is absolutely true. Absolutely true. Walker Zimmerman, you could argue, is this team's most important player in a lot of ways. And we've seen that play out over the last few weeks, including in those 3 points taken against Toronto.
And on the flip side of that, you can make the argument now maybe he's the most important attacker because he's created 2 goals from attacking. Essentially at this point, I say that tongue-in-cheek, against Montreal on a goal from Sam Surridge, and then over the weekend assisting Shaq Moore. But his presence in the back line alone, Lucas, we've spoken a lot about that this season in just getting guys lined up in the correct spot. And at one point, Nashville goes 4 straight games allowing a set-piece goal. We've not seen that since then. We're going to get into the Atlanta match coming up here in just a few minutes, but it was an outside-the-box Atlanta goal, first time from Bartosz Slisz, that ultimately got Atlanta United a point this weekend. We're not seeing a lot of those mental mistakes from Nashville SC that was leading directly to goal-scoring opportunities for opponents. And we didn't see that against Toronto. Ended a 12-match run for Nashville SC without a clean sheet against MLS competition. That includes CONCACAF Champions Cup and 2 legs against Miami. That was the longest run in club history. Good to see that come to an end last Wednesday, and good just for those defenders to get that added confidence with Walker out there.
And if I'm not mistaken, Nashville has not allowed a set-piece goal since Miami, April 20th. Correct?
Right.
So
that's right.
You're talking about 5 straight games over a month, and it directly coincides with Walker Zimmerman coming back into the fold because the first game of that stretch was at home, San Jose, April 27th. Now, Zimmerman came off the bench in that game. 77th minute, he made his return, started against Montreal, and then, of course, against Toronto and Atlanta United. But, yes, without question, his impact has made a massive, massive difference. And, look, we all understand how important Hani Mukhtar is to this team, and it may sound insane to say that Walker Zimmerman means more to this team than arguably any other player, but you just have to look at the results, right? When Zimmerman is there, the confidence level and the floor just gets raised across the board at every level. I'm not going to diminish what Hani Mukhtar means to this team. I would be a fool to do so, but I think it's more about highlighting the impact of Walker Zimmerman and just how significant that is and how critical that's going to be moving forward, especially, Will, in these next few weeks when there's a change in leadership, interim manager, obviously a lot of questions right now about the short-term and long-term future about the club. Those voices in the locker room, like Walker Zimmerman, are so critical at a point like this. So very, very important and on and off the field in this period.
Saturday afternoon game, 1-1 against Atlanta United. Head coach Rumba Munthali on the touchline. Some changes we're going to get into that Nashville made. But first, the highlights of it. Hani Mukhtar, a 40th minute penalty kick, his 3rd goal of the season, his 7th goal against Atlanta United in all competitions. They are one of the many teams that he has really just had a lot of success, enjoy against in his MLS career. 3 of his 7 goals against Atlanta, penalty kick goals. He converts on the spot once again. Also, a congratulations to him are in order as well. He celebrates the goal by announcing that he and his wife, Ashley, are expecting their first child. They have now gotten married at Geodis Park, and now they have announced their first child at Geodis Park. All of the Mukhtar life and soccer accomplishments are happening on the Geodis Park pitch.
What's next? I mean, I don't know how you won up.
The birth would be next.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's the natural progression. But no doubt, that is also the second pregnancy announcement we've had in a gold shirt this season. Of course, Jacob Schaffelberg announcing he and his wife Robin pregnant. That was way back in CONCACAF Champions Cup, the second leg against Mocha in March. So, no doubt, congratulations to the entire Mukhtar family. I think Liv Gurian, our host on Spotlight on Apple TV, has called them the first family of Nashville Soccer Club. Without a doubt, that is the case, and his success continues against Atlanta. Hani Mukhtar looked confident. He looked bright in this game, and I believe 5 shots taken on the day, 404 shots for Hani Mukhtar since the start of the 2020 season. It's a lot of shots, but to put it into context, Will, no other player in Major League Soccer has crossed 300 in that time span. I mean, it's an absolutely absurd gulf there between Mukhtar and everybody else in terms of taking those opportunities. Nashville outshooting Atlanta in this game in shots and shots on target, created 5 more corner kick opportunities than Atlanta in this game, and just looked positive going forward. Very attack-minded, front foot kind of mindset from Munthali in this game in his first match as the interim manager post Gary Smith firing. And look, you always want to take 3 points at home without a doubt, but I think there were some things to build off in this game against Atlanta.
Certainly were. And the fact that Shaq Moore and Walker Zimmerman started together for the first time since March 2nd in Colorado, early in the season, when Nashville went up to Colorado and got a 1-1 draw, was also Shaq Moore's first start since suffering an injury after the March 23rd game against LAFC. That was the last time that he had been available for NSC from the start. Lucas, Nashville has now used 10 different back lines this season. That is a very difficult way to operate in MLS. It is especially difficult when one of those members of the back line is a designated player whose value we've well documented in Walker Zimmerman. But the return to the back four, this was a talking point coming out of this game. And really, Rumba Munthali implemented, I should say, a lot of the ideas that we saw Nashville have a ton of success with last season. They pushed the wings very high in possession. Hani Mukhtar was all over the place, picking up the ball in midfield, joining Sam Surridge as a second striker when Tyler Boyd came short to receive the ball. But overall, in the shape and in the approach in Rumba Munthali's first game as interim head coach, what did you like?
I just liked how forward-thinking Nashville was. Certainly bright in the early goings, but I feel like you can see the bones kind of what Rumba wants to do, just in that everything, and we're going to hear from him in a little bit, but he talked about this post-game. Everything Rumba Munthali is doing right now feels like it's about just instilling confidence in players, which is a very hard thing to do if you were to step into an interim role and in that first game at home, you're bunkering down, you're just trying to get something out of it, you're playing very conservative. You know, what kind of message does that send? It wouldn't necessarily instill confidence in the group. And Munthali didn't do that. As a coach who already has that familiarity with the squad, stepping into this new role, so important for him to kind of take that approach, I think, and I would expect that to continue. And that goes for certain areas of the field, like even just kicking Josh Bauer out to right back, right? And giving him an opportunity to utilize his athleticism in that setting where Nashville just doesn't have a ton of depth outside of Shaq Moore. It's a huge reason why Nashville went back to the 3-5-2 after Moore's injury and obviously a few other injuries that were in effect there as well in that decision by Gary Smith. But I like the immediate decision to go back to the back four and just go forward, be bright, and instill that confidence that Nashville has lacked at points this season, but they didn't look like a group that lacked confidence against Atlanta. I think it's going to be very important as this club looks for its next manager.
It certainly looked a lot like Nashville did last summer when Nashville went 10 matches unbeaten in MLS play. When Nashville at one point was second place in the MLS Supporters Shield standings. Nashville 1.47 expected goals in this game. Atlanta 0.59. Hani Mukhtar about scored all the way from 12 South with his second half strike that hit the post. It was further out even than his goal against San Jose a couple of weeks ago that he essentially hit from Edge Hill. But I thought the first half display, especially, Lucas, was impressive when you had Walker Zimmerman and Shaq Moore both on the pitch for every single one of those minutes. And I thought especially the directness of the fullbacks playing forward to that front line was particularly impressive. And just the accuracy with which Shaq Moore was able to link up with Tyler Boyd, Dan Lovitz with Jacob Schaffelberg. I think now the next step, Lucas, will be for Nashville creating partnerships in critical areas where two players are going to play within the same zone of the pitch, right? We know Anibal Godoy and Sean Davis have played a lot of soccer together in Nashville shirts. Shaq Moore and Tyler Boyd, not so much. That's a partnership that's going to need to be created down the Nashville right-hand side. Jacob Schaffelberg and Dan Lovitz, okay, now you're back to a partnership where when Jacob nods his head in a certain way, Dan knows exactly what he's doing. When Jacob communicates with Dan, with only his eyes, Dan can read his mind a little bit. It's going to take Nashville some time to reinvigorate some of those connections on the pitch, but I think especially, Lucas, as you look at 4 of the next 5 on the road, a trip to Cincinnati, a part of that next Wednesday, it was vital to get something from this game in a crazy week, to say the least.
Absolutely. And think about everything that was just packed into those few days after a midweek result against Toronto at home. It's a quick turnaround. Rumba Munthali barely had time to communicate with the team before they're getting ready, setting lineups, and walking out for a rivalry match, no less, against Atlanta United, the Southern Championship belt, all of those things on the line. So, good for Nashville to get into this week, too, and not have that midweek fixture to worry about, kind of settle into this new reality that the boys in gold are in with Munthali at the helm as the interim, and go up against, I guess, on the positive side, a familiar side in Montreal, a team that you just saw 2 weeks ago. But it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what Munthali does against Montreal. I know we'll get a little bit into that matchup later on when we are fresh off of seeing Nashville get that 4-1 win against Montreal with that 3-5-2 shape. Montreal probably will have no idea how Nashville is going to come into this game. So a few wild cards there to kind of examine as we get closer and closer to that matchup. Fascinated to see how Nashville comes out up in the north in Canada when they take on Montreal again.
Certainly. One note as well to get to this week, Shaq Moore called up to the U.S. men's national team June training camp roster. This is a very strong side that Nashville has for a couple of friendlies against Colombia and Brazil. We got a question on YouTube about this. Taylor asking, when will Shaq start missing games for national call-up? The beauty of this is that these matches are June 8th and June 12th. Nashville does not have a match on June the 8th. They are in Orlando, Florida on June the 12th. So, again, the logistics and the specifics of this can oftentimes be hard to project far out. We don't know what the next week and a half looks like for Shaq Moore, but it looks like he may not need to miss any time for Nashville, which is certainly a good thing considering they just got him back.
Right. The question is, of course, what might this mean for Shaq Moore in terms of inclusion in Copa America?
Right.
That's the big question, where he would obviously miss some games for Nashville on the back end of June going into July, which is at least when the Copa America group stage happens, U.S. with Bolivia, Panama, and Uruguay. Anibal Godoy, another name to watch in that regard, could very well have a Shaq Moore versus Anibal Godoy matchup in the second game of that group stage in Copa America. But for the time being, you're right. It times out nicely that Colombia game is right there in Nashville's bye week, so to speak. And maybe it would be a quick turnaround for Shaq Moore to play against Brazil and then come back and join Nashville at the end of that week following the June 12th matchup for the U.S. But certainly you're not taking that much of a hit on the front end, because we've seen what it's like for Nashville to be down Shaq Moore for stretches this season, and just how much more expansive he makes this group, especially on the right side of that attack and in a back four. And also if Nashville's in a back three and what he can do as that right wing back, his skill set is so well suited for that type of role as well. So for the immediate future, not a huge concern to be missing Shaq Moore due to friendlies, but of course we'll keep an eye on what that might look like in terms of potential Copa America inclusion.
Coming up next, the full comments from General Manager Mike Jacobs, interim head coach Rumba Munthali over the weekend after Nashville's 1-1 draw to Atlanta United. We have that for you when we come back on NSC Backstage. NSC Backstage rolls on right here on 104.5 The Zone alongside Lucas Panzica. I'm Will Boulding. Jackson Williams is our producer. And last week, Nashville Soccer Club announced the departure of Gary Smith as the club's first head coach, concluding a 7-season tenure that saw Nashville reach the playoffs for 6 consecutive seasons at the USL Championship level and the MLS level. That brings in Rumba Munthali, the interim head coach. We've mentioned the forward-thinking approach that he applied for NSC in its 1-1 draw against Atlanta United over the weekend. He is in charge while the club conducts the search for its next head coach. Under Gary Smith's leadership, of course, Nashville SC was terrific at the USL Championship, a 32-win record over 2 seasons, 2 playoff appearances, and a second-place finish in the Eastern Conference in 2019. His transition to MLS, the way that Gary Smith handled that change from USL to Major League Soccer, it was seamless. And Gary Smith departs Nashville SC with an MLS record of 52 wins, including 3 playoff wins, as the club reached the playoffs 4 times and boasted the least number of goals conceded last season, tied with Seattle Sounders. Nashville, one of 3 expansion clubs in MLS history, Lucas Panzica, to make the playoffs in each of their first 4 seasons. The bar has been set high for whoever is next. We're about to hear from Mike Jacobs and Rumba Munthali, but the message from the club has been, this is a good roster. This is a team that we still feel like has plenty of time to compete this season. What does Nashville 2.0 now look like?
Right. And that's what answers questions about the timing, right? On why at this point in the season, why before the summer window. That's exactly why, because Nashville feels it can compete, that it can achieve something in 2024. So going ahead and making this move at this point in the calendar. And there's 2 sides to this coin, right? As it is anytime a manager gets fired. And first of all, 7th year of Gary Smith in charge of Nashville. Will, you know, and any sports fan knows, in any league, in any sport, but especially in professional soccer, that's a long time. 6.5 years is a long tenure at one club. And for Gary Smith, it was a very unique tenure as opposed to most MLS coaches because of the ground-up nature of it. And Mike Jacobs put it well when he said Gary Smith was the perfect coach to begin the roots of Nashville Soccer Club. So there's 2 sides to the coin. And when you look at the positives of it and the standard that Smith set, in his 4.5 years, Nashville conceded 1.04 goals per game. Only Philadelphia Union can say they've conceded fewer, that they have a better rate of conceding goals in that time span. So that's kind of everything about the foundation of Gary Smith. Everything kind of goes from that standard, right? That defensive standard on up. Now, there's the other side of the coin, and that's that Nashville has won 5 of their final 27 MLS matches under Smith. So trends that Nashville's trying to reverse by going into this new era as a club, understanding that Gary Smith was perfect for what Nashville wanted to do to make that transition from USL into MLS with a strong foundation that could compete and be consistent, and that's what they did. But Nashville's in a different era now. Now it's about elevating out of that edition of Nashville Soccer Club, and they'll look to bring someone else in to do that. But certainly Gary Smith will hold his place in the history of Nashville soccer.
General Manager Mike Jacobs and interim head coach Rumba Munthali spoke to the media on Saturday after Nashville's draw to Atlanta. Here are their full comments.
Games in a week, and such a quick turnaround from Wednesday is definitely a challenge. And especially with everything that's happened this week, to have Rumba get the guys so organized so quickly, to have them play very brave in the first half on the front foot, really encouraged to kind of see the energy the guys came out with. And it's a bit of a marathon to get through 3 games in a week, and obviously you want to get 3 points all the time, especially at home. But certainly something to build off of.
Thank you, Mike. Rumba, what did you see from the team today?
I was pleased, like Mike said. I thought guys were brave, guys were organized with the little time that we had to prepare. I thought guys were up for the challenge and were extremely positive with each other. And I think there's a lot of positives to take from the game, and especially with such a short turnaround. So, yeah, I was really pleased and really happy for the guys.
Thank you both. We are now going to open the floor for questions. We'll start with those in the room. Just alert me if you have a question coming up. Valer.
Hey, Mike. If you can just go a little deeper into the decision from earlier this week to with Gary Smith and what led to that decision. If you can just give us a little bit more insight, that'd be great.
Sure. So we talk a lot with our group, be it the players, the coaching staff, the support staff, about process versus outcome. An outcome is literally wins and losses. Process is how we win and what things we have to do to work hard not to lose. For us, we just can't afford to be reactionary or, to be in a situation where we make decisions, rash based off of one game or one day or 1 week. Something like this, a decision like that, it goes over a period of time. You think about the idea of a group that was second place Supporter Shield in Eastern Conference this time last year. Obviously really struggled toward the end of last season. And, to look at something like this, it's less one game or 1 week as much as maybe over the last 30 plus games over the last year. We just felt that there were some trends that we had hoped maybe would reverse or change. Didn't happen. And for us felt like, rather than be reactionary, we were pretty measured with the idea that was the right time to make a decision.
Mike, kind of a similar question. Obviously, Nashville has never had a manager besides Gary, and it feels like in a lot of ways the team is kind of linked with him. Now that he's not here, what are you looking for in the next manager? Is this kind of maybe a chance to reevaluate and kind of reassess the top-down vision of what you want the club to be on the pitch, and maybe what the time frame is looking like?
You think about from where we started with this group, and Ben, you obviously were covering us from the beginning. There's no question in my mind when we first started this whole project, like Gary was absolutely the right coach to take us into the start of this process. Over time, 4+ years in MLS and two more in USL, I just think, it got to a certain point where we needed to have a new voice and a fresher perspective. And really, look at where we started, in NSC 1.0, as we continue to kind of need to look at a league and teams that grow and evolve, we have to do the same ourselves. So from that standpoint, the hope is that, where we go going forward, it's going to make sure that, we take advantage of the things we can that reflect, the league as it grows and make sure that it reflects within our own team.
Last 48 hours have been a little bit hectic. Lots of changes and new things that have popped up. I wanted us to be organized, I think keep our shape, and I think a staple of our club is to be sound defensively. And so I wanted to make sure that we continue that, even if there's a little bit of alterations and changes, but also like to be brave and to, try and take risks and to play with confidence and play with bravery. And so I think even offensively, you saw guys doing that and guys trying to express themselves. And so I think, those two things were clear, and I think those two things were what I was looking for.
Mike, obviously you said it well in terms of what was the team were last year at this point and what it is today. Do you still feel like in terms of personnel, Nashville still has what it takes to get better and get up there in the table, or was just a matter of the relationship with Gary and the guys in the institution?
We feel strong enough about the personnel that we have that making a move like this and doing it 12 games in gives a group that we believe has the personnel to compete and continue to do what the expectations of this club to advance in the playoffs and pursue a cup. That's one of the big reasons that we made the move when we did. To do it when there's still plenty of season left, where this group has a chance to embrace the situation we're in right now and to work towards pushing forward and pursue a playoff spot. So we believe we can do that with this group for sure.
Mike, kind of bouncing off of Claudio's question about the strength of the team and the amount of the players you have. It's good quality. Do you by chance have any idea of maybe adding players in the summer window? Or would that kind of just wait until a new coach is in process here?
To be totally honest, for me as transparent as possible, I just really can't comment about what our plans are for the summer window. I don't want to create a competitive disadvantage for our team. But obviously, you look historically what our group's done. We've always looked to add players in each window, and looking at taking the first half of the season, if it's summer window, the second half of the season, or the whole body of work for the season heading into the winter window, taking a really good look at what we think we might need to add to our group and enhance it. So it's definitely something that we're looking at. But I would say also it's important to make sure that we're either, all along, we always make sure that a manager plays a huge role in the players we end up acquiring. But, even more so making sure that when we're adding players, the hope is we bring guys in that they're flexible players and versatile enough that they can play for different managers in a variety of shapes and in a variety of positions.
Rumba, you're obviously being dropped into the fire here a little bit in the middle of the season. What's it going to take to kind of get this team back on track, and how do you go about that?
I think being dropped into like this situation, I think, is just a little bit different. I was brought to the club to help make players better, right? And so in this time period, why I'm trying to help steer the ship is trying to continue to make players better and have them excel and be ready for the next person who comes to lead the club. And so it's the same job I was doing, just a different capacity. So I still just want to help each individual be the best version of themselves. And so hope we continue to do that.
We got time for 2 more questions. Ben, go ahead.
Mike, there have been a couple pretty significant investments in the transfer market that haven't worked. I'm thinking maybe Ake Loba, Rodrigo Pinheiro. Is that kind of do those play a role in the decision to let Gary go? And is that something you're kind of looking to improve on with the next manager? Is kind of that player development and making the most of those investments?
Honestly, I feel like it's probably not appropriate for me to comment on, what didn't happen with the manager not here anymore. What I can say is that, for us, you have to look at, I mentioned as we move into like maybe 2.0 and evolution of our club on the field, we have to take advantage of the things that our league allows us to do, and whether that's utilizing players in the U22 initiative, whether it's being able to identify players from areas of the country and parts of the world that'll generate high resale value. We have to make sure that we're malleable and we're flexible ourselves. And for us, I think that's something, there's lessons learned for all of us to keep getting better, including myself.
Mike, I know you're not going to give us names because you don't want to give us any competitive advantage or anything like that, but I'm just curious in a profile sense, what are you looking for the next manager, and have you already started that process of looking into that?
Well, you already answered the first part of the question yourself, so I'm not going to touch on that. What I would tell you is, we're being open-minded. We're not going to box ourselves in a corner and say it's got to be somebody from a certain part of the world or for certain experiences. What I would say also though is the idea of having insight into what you're looking for. I don't know that you just start doing that like you move a manager one day and you start the next day. I think for us, the leadership for our club, I think we always have ideas about things that we think are important to have not only in our current manager but in just in leadership in general in our club. Probably not the answer that you want, but what I would tell you is, we're being very open-minded, very thoughtful, and very strategic. And I hope you appreciate that when we do announce the manager, it's not going to be like a knee-jerk type reaction, and just like a rash hiring. It's going to be someone that went through a lot of thought and decision-making about what's the best interest. Not only like who's the best manager, really, it's who's the best manager for Nashville SC.
Thoughtful and strategic as Nashville looks for the new iteration of the Boys in Gold, NSC 2.0. That was General Manager Mike Jacobs along with interim head coach Rumba Munthali here on NSC Backstage as they addressed the media over the weekend in Nashville's 1-1 draw against Atlanta United. Lucas Panzica, what stood out?
Yeah, I like that idea of Nashville 2.0 because Nashville's in a unique position as a club that's only been in MLS for 4.5 years, that is having to make this type of change after a successful period, right? Because we've seen expansion sides come into Major League Soccer and struggle at the early onset. Obviously, Inter Miami comes to mind and have to make multiple changes, not because they're trying to elevate or kind of get to the next level, so to speak, but because so-and-so didn't work, and they're trying to figure out a way to just get a foundation and find their footing. Cincinnati comes to mind. A dreadful start to their MLS existence, and kind of lost in the wilderness in a way. Pat Noonan comes in, steadies the ship. They make good signings, smart signings around the world, and now here's FC Cincinnati, defending Supporters Shield champions and certainly in contention for MLS Cup in 2024. Nashville came in with stability. They had stability for the first 4.5 years. Now they're trying to kind of level up in a way. So maintaining the organization and that structure that made Nashville one of MLS's most consistent clubs for 4 seasons, while elevating into a new era with an evolution that kind of keeps pace with the best teams in the league right now. That means style of play. That means establishing an exciting brand of soccer. That means investment in players from different corners of the world. And Mike Jacobs mentioned it, utilizing systems that are in place to integrate young players, systems that could evolve themselves in the near future. It's been reported, Will, it's not official, but it's been reported, the idea of the U22 initiative essentially being expanded to where teams can have 3 U22 slots no matter how they strategize their 3 designated player slots. For right now, the amount of U22 players that you get totally depends on how you utilize your 3 DP slots, right? Obviously, Nashville has all 3 designated players, Zimmerman, Mukhtar, Surridge. They have 1 U22 player, and that's Drew Yearwood. So if that does continue to evolve, Nashville's ability to evolve with it is a huge opportunity. So I would argue that apart from that initial entry into MLS, this is the most pivotal moment in the club's history, because in 2020, it was about establishing that foundation with a manager and a couple of players that were carrying over from USL. It was about finding some footing. It was about finding an identity in MLS. They achieved that. They accomplished that. Now Nashville has that foundation, and they're looking to elevate. Huntsville City currently has an interim manager in place. Nashville Soccer Club has an interim manager in place. The next few weeks are going to be so critical in shaping the club's future.
Certainly are. And the man who is at the helm in the meantime, Lucas, Rumba Munthali, is as positive of an influence as you are going to find for players, for coaches, for backroom staff, for frontroom staff, for anybody in this organization. And you talk to anybody in the organization, Lucas, about Rumba Munthali, they will all light up and tell you the same thing right away. He is a positive influence on players. Talked to Mike Jacobs before the game on Saturday, and that was the first thing he told us was guys are going to express themselves because he's going to make them feel comfortable, feel positive. They're going to have fun playing for NSC, which is not an indictment of a previous regime. That is simply the way that Nashville continues to develop its players in the meantime as they search for a head coach and someone in Rumba Munthali who really is going to have the ability to connect with a lot of important players in this team right now. What do you like the most about his resume?
Well, what you kind of alluded to, the direct line that he already has to young players up and down Nashville's system, not Nashville's roster, Nashville as an organization trickling down to Huntsville. And look, it would have been too short a turnaround for the Atlanta game, but I'm very curious, do we see players like a Julian Gaines get more of an opportunity, like a Forster Ajago, who would need to occupy an international slot, but scored a brace on Saturday, ironically also against Atlanta, the Atlanta United 2 side playing for Huntsville. That is a hard line to walk because Nashville, this is not a situation where it's October, right? You're at the end of the season. You went ahead and made the change. Interim manager is in place for the last few games. You're already out of playoff contention. This is nothing like that. Nashville thinks it can accomplish something this season. So the results, Will, in this stretch are just as important as any other stretch throughout the course of the season. So it's an interesting line for Rumba to walk in implementing some of his ideas, potentially giving players that he has that relationship with, that he has helped with their development, maybe giving those players somewhat of an opportunity without losing any sort of competitive advantage. It's a hard line to walk, and I'm fascinated to see how he does it because I think we see maybe a clearer picture of that in the coming matches as opposed to Atlanta when you're 2 days off the announcement and everything is fresh and it's the turnaround with the snap of a finger. So Montreal Saturday on the road is going to be fascinating in that regard.
Coming up, we will talk about that Montreal match, a game that Nashville won on May the 4th, 4-1 against CF Montreal. It is a home side that desperately needs points, a Nashville team that begins a difficult stretch of road games. We dive into the details you need to know coming up next. Wrapping up the show, NSC Backstage right here on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling, Jackson Williams with you as we get you ready for NSC and CF Montreal. Lucas, a team that needs a win, maybe as much as anybody needs a win in Major League Soccer right now. 4 losses in a row. They have been outscored 15-5 in those 4 games, starting with the Nashville loss, a 5-1 defeat to Toronto over the weekend. They are reeling at the moment under first-year head coach Laurent Courtois.
Well, you talk about reeling. Montreal's playing right now. It's halftime in their Canadian Championship fixture in the quarterfinals, the second leg against Forge, a Canadian Premier League side. They're down 2-0 at the break, Montreal. So it is across the board at the moment. And first leg, by the way, was 1-1. A match that any MLS club, like this is an equivalent to Nashville SC Mocha and CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? Like this is just something, it's you dispatch the opponent, you move on. No disrespect to Forge, but
I don't know if there are any Forge FC fans.
Not sure. I hope we get an angry caller from Forge. That would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, reeling is the right word. And part of that losing streak was against Nashville, of course. Feels like it just happened, at least for me, right? Like I did that game and then I left to go on my vacation and now I'm back and Nashville's playing Montreal again. Always interesting when the rematch happens about 2 weeks after the initial game, but 4-1 was the final. Sam Surridge with the hat trick. It was probably Nashville's most complete performance of the season. They were very, very good defensively. There was one moment where ball gets through in the box and Walker Zimmerman kind of gets the wrong foot on it. It's an own goal. Montreal gets on the board and quickly Nashville puts the nail in the coffin with Sam Surridge completing the hat trick in the 82nd minute and the 4-1 win. Remember, that game checked a lot of boxes for Nashville. It was Surridge with the hat trick. It was getting Zimmerman back on the field. It was not allowing a set-piece goal. It was, keeping teams in front of them with that possession without purpose and then making the most of Nashville's opportunities in the final third. There were a lot of things that went right for Nashville in that game. They need to carry that over now with a different voice on the touchline in Rumba Munthali, and on the road, a place where Nashville fell to Montreal last summer, 1-0 in 2023. So not a very easy place to go up and play, but without question, this is a desperate Montreal side right now. And Will, I feel like we are seeing the effects, the negative effects of how implementing that possessive Columbus Crew type of play style, the ugly side of that, so to speak, right, with Laurent Courtois, with playing out of the back, with playing short corners, a lot of that is backfiring for Montreal at the moment with those mistakes leading to goals conceded. Doesn't help. Several star players have been out injured for quite some time.
Yeah, and they have used 25 players this season, CF Montreal. That is third most in MLS. You talk about Matias Kokoro, José Martinez, one of the top scorers in MLS history. Nathan Saliba, a talented academy graduate who fits all across really that front 5 in the midfield for Montreal. And then Kwado Opoku, the former LAFC winger. All of those players have been out since Nashville last saw Montreal. And that was on May the 4th. And they continue to try to get a number of senior players back. Talking about this on NSC Spotlight this week, Lucas, we really focused on Apple TV. You can find that on the NSC team page. Laurent Courtois is going through a lot of the growing pains that Wilfried Nancy did in Columbus, where Columbus was losing possession in their defensive third. They were insisting on playing out for the back in moments where it probably wasn't in their best interest. However, they took their lumps in March, April, and May in order to put themselves in position to be the best version of themselves in September, November, October. And they did. They won MLS Cup last season. That's not to say that this Montreal team, from a personnel perspective, is in position to make that level of a jump. However, I do think you can make arguments that a Montreal team that's conceded 31 goals this season, a lot of those are from insisting on playing their way, which is a beautiful way of playing soccer under Laurent Courtois, playing out for the back, taking risks, getting pressed, and sometimes turning it over in your own half.
Yeah, and just think, Wilfried Nancy, even with those struggles, still had the luxury of Cucho Hernandez and Lucas Zelarayan and Darlington Nabby, one of the best midfield marshals in MLS. Exactly. So Laurent Courtois does not have that at his disposal right now. The players that he does have at that pedigree are not available right now. So it's a very tough spot for him to be in. But look, this is Major League Soccer. It's a weird thing, Will, that sometimes going into the stadium of the team that is reeling on a losing streak, that is desperate for a result, that feels like it is very much due a result, can be even more dangerous than going in against the confident team that's riding high and has won 5 of their last 6, similar to what Nashville's about to do next Wednesday at Cincinnati. I'm not saying Montreal's a better team than Cincinnati. It's just the nature of Major League Soccer. This is not a walk-in, pick up your 3 points, put them in the back pocket, and stroll home. Nashville's going to get a fight from a Montreal side that is coming off an embarrassment in their last outing and wants to show something to their home fans. So I do not expect this to, this is not a manager under pressure that, players are not bought in, nothing like that. It's year 1 for Laurent Courtois. I think there is a vision there, and I think we're going to see a spirited effort from Montreal. And Nashville, obviously, with Rumba Munthali leading the way as the interim manager, is going to have quite the task to go on the road for the first time in this new era.
Nashville SC, CF Montreal, Saputo Stadium in Montreal, 6 o'clock pregame coverage. Our kickoff is at 6:30 right here on 104.5 The Zone. Join me and Eddie Carvacho for the call this weekend. Looking forward to that. Before next Wednesday, we will not be on the air for NSC Backstage. That is because Nashville will be at TQL Stadium taking on the second place side in the MLS Eastern Conference, FC Cincinnati. Always big when Nashville gets together with Cincy. We'll bring that for you next Wednesday before the boys in gold are back home next weekend against New England Revolution. That is our show tonight. We will talk to you Saturday night from up north when Nashville takes on Montreal. 6 o'clock pregame coverage. For Jackson Williams, our producer, Lucas Panzica, I'm Will Bowling. This has been NSC Backstage.